Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Weekend Review with The Informant. And I apologize. I know it's Weekend Review, and it's been 2 weeks since I posted a video, but we had the 4th of July weekend, of course, a week after I posted my last video. And then the week after that, I had my future in-laws in town. So it was pretty busy the last 2 weekends. So finally getting around to uploading another video. And boy, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So first things first, I hope everyone's doing good. If this is your first time here, I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider hitting the like, sharing it, subscribing on whatever platform you're seeing it on, etc., etc. So first things first, obviously one of the big ones in the last couple weeks is, of course, the Trump lawsuit against Facebook and Twitter and Google. Donald Trump on Wednesday announced that he will lead class action lawsuits against Twitter, Google, and Facebook over alleged censorship, declaring that, quote, big tech is out of control and is functioning as the de facto censorship arm of the U.S. government. With the social media companies, while the social media companies are officially private entities, in recent years they have ceased to be private with the enactment of their historical use of Section 230, which profoundly protects them from liability, Trump said as he announced the lawsuits in conjunction with the America First Policy Institute. And you can take a look at the whole lawsuit here. It's very long, but, if you have the time and if you're a law nerd, it's worth a read. It is, in effect, a massive government subsidy. These companies have been co-opted, coerced, and weaponized by government actors to become the forces of illegal, unconstitutional censorship. So this is, of course, what everybody has been pretty much waiting for this entire time, and probably over the last 4 years. Now, I said this in a recent video from a few weeks ago, where I kind of commented on how everybody has been kind of commenting on, Trump complaining about this, Trump complaining about that, but he had 4 years and he didn't do anything. So you had 4 years, bro, and you didn't do anything. Like, all right, first off, now there's nothing wrong with having that opinion. I get it. But it's a very basic, simple-minded opinion. To be perfectly honest, there really wasn't much Trump could do in office. The reason why is because anything that he would have done would have been vehemently challenged and opposed in the House and the Senate by Democrats, and heck, probably some Republicans too. Because say he was to take executive action against the big tech companies, well, that would be considered federal overreach into private companies. So you would have a lot of pure libertarian constitutionalists, like I would even say, maybe even Rand Paul would say, that's overreach by the federal government. The federal government should not be dictating what private companies can and cannot do. Now, are these companies acting like they're not private companies? To a degree, yes. Yes, they are acting like, when I say private companies, I'm saying like when they're acting as like, I believe publishers, where they're like effectively controlling what you can and cannot see and what you can and cannot say. Then it ceases to fall outside the realm of Section 230, I believe, or something along those lines. It's confusing, and I always get it backwards. So, but basically, the federal government should not. I can't say can't, because let's face it, they can do whatever the hell they want. But they should not be in the position to tell private company to force private companies to do things or to not do things. That, like, again, I've said it again and again, it's federal overreach. So let's say he was to do something like that, it would be immediately like stonewalled in the Senate. There would be a huge fight verbally back and forth, and again, in the end, you would probably see the Democrats somehow conjure up yet another impeachment strategy, saying he's acting like a dictator, he's undermining the constitutional rights of these private businesses, and blah 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 blah. Because if anybody has actually sat and watched these political theater hearings that they have when it comes to these tech CEOs in Congress, when you actually sit and listen to the Democrats, not the Republicans, everybody hears the Republican side of things. Everybody hears the sound bites from Ted Cruz, Jim Jordan, Marco Rubio, Rand Paul. Like everybody hears all this stuff from from all of these talking heads that you always hear about. Well, what you don't hear are the Democrats, and I've sat and listened to what these Democrats have to say. They don't really ask any question. Well, the questions they ask are like leading questions. It's like, hey, here's your question, and in this question, I'm also saying something to give away the answer I want you to say. You know what I mean? It's like they're leading them into what they want them to say, because they know that big tech is on their side. So, I've heard it, like this one Democrat congresswoman was like, I believe they were talking to either Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey, and she said, sir, the Republicans, he's like, my Republican counterparts in the Senate constantly go on about how there is unfair targeted censorship of conservatives on social media, which we all know isn't true. Now my question is, and that's how she starts her question, already dispelling it, saying, oh, they're lying, and it's okay, you and I both know they're lying, right? So here's my question. So they already are on that side of things. You already have a divide on this. There's really no bipartisan support when it comes to taking federal action against these types of things. So I think, Trump was smart enough to know that, and knew that there was nothing he could do outside of push his senators in Congress to actually work on a bill of somehow redoing Section 230 or scrapping it all together and making a new bill. So that was the end game all along. And I honestly think that the position that Donald Trump is in right now is the best position to be doing this type of a lawsuit. He couldn't do it while he was president, so it's best to do it now. And plus, he has him right where he wants him, right when they completely, kicked him off of social media for virtually no good reason outside of, he said a thing we didn't like and his followers are bad people. You know what I mean? So this is the best position for this type of action. And since it's a class action lawsuit, more people can get on board, aka more people who feel they have been unrightfully targeted by these social media companies, by these big tech companies. So there you go. You have it. You just weren't willing. A lot of these people, a lot of these online commentators, just weren't willing to wait. They weren't thinking of the long game. And Trump always thinks the long game. I know the whole 4D chess meme and all that stuff, but I believe this is actually true. I honestly believe in this position, Trump was playing the long game here. He knew it would be a convoluted mess for him to get involved as president trying to do something about these companies, which is why he tweeted about it, he commented on it, in his rallies he always talked about it, and he was pushing these Republicans in Congress to actually do something about it besides say stuff. And now that he's on the outside look, now that he's a private citizen again, this is the best chance Americans have at actually doing something about this. And now there's not going to be a single Republican on the ballot who's going to have a chance in 2022 unless they are speaking out against this stuff and has his endorsement. So that's what I wanted to focus on here. I think this is a very good step forward. Obviously, all these things take time. This is not stuff that just happens overnight. In this day and age, we all want stuff now. But trust me, as somebody who works in the swamp, let me tell you, nothing gets done quickly. Absolutely nothing. Even on the low end where I'm at, nothing is done quickly at all. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to something a little bit more lighthearted. Let's point and laugh at this clown, Michael Avenatti. We all know about this guy. This guy who is now going to prison for 2.5 years for attempting to extort. This is so ridiculous. I still laugh when I read this. Attempting to extort millions of dollars from Nike. Like, how crazy do you have to be to think that you could get away with this? Like, and what's so funny, and I've seen this everywhere. You could probably find compilations of it online of just these left wing hacks on these news sites and news channels like MSNBC and CNN and all the other ones, whatever. You can just go on and on and on talking about how amazing this guy is. Oh, you're a beast. He's the thorn in Donald Trump's side. He's going to take him down. Him and Mueller to the rescue. He could be president. Like, this guy, he went from, you know, representing this complete degenerate to to being all over TV, getting all of these guest spots and all of these talk shows and all of these news panels, you know, pretending to run for president for a little bit, and just pulled like the biggest con. And then now, because he thought he was so untouchable, he freaking tries to extort Nike. And in the end, the Trump curse is still real. It's still alive and well. And he's 50 years old. So he's going to be, you know, almost 53 by the time he gets out. His career's done. Who knows? But I guarantee you this is what's going to happen. This is my prediction. This is what's going to happen. While he's in prison, he's going to write. He's going to write. And he's going to come out and he's going to write a book. And I guarantee you he's going to get a deal. And I guarantee you he's going to make millions off of it. People will buy this crap. I guarantee you. We haven't heard the last of Michael Avenatti. By the time he gets out of prison, he's going to have a book. He's going to get a deal. And he's going to make money. He's going to make a ton of money on a book, and it's going to be peddled as his redemption arc, like how I lost my way and found my way back, or something like that. It's going to be something like, and of course he's going to have a bunch of crazy stuff about Trump in there, and he's going to talk about how this is really his fault, and the stress of going after this madman caused me to lose focus, and and I guarantee you he's going to write a book. And people are going to buy it, and he's going to make money, and we're going to see him. He's going to be back on TV. We all know what's going to happen. So I'm telling you, 2.5 years. And when it happens, on the day it comes out, I will make a video and I will highlight this whole section and say, I told you so. All right. Now for some real nonsense. No thanks, Breitbart. Oh, come on. All right. Texas Democrats leave state to try to stop GOP voting bill. So in probably one of the biggest I don't like this game, I'm going home examples, the Democrats in Texas, in the Texas legislature, they leave instead of doing their job and voting like they're supposed to, and head to Washington. Now, I'm sure all of you have seen this by now. It's been all over the news. These people, because they lost, not lost, but because they don't have majority, because they don't like this bill that the GOP came up with in Texas. This for voting, it's not suppression, it's not limiting rights. It's actually expanding and making things more secure. And I know everybody talks about who's making it easier to vote, harder to cheat. And it's like, well, yeah, it's really just making it harder to cheat. I mean, easier to vote. It is easy to vote. Whoever says it's not easy to vote is delusional and is living in a different reality than I am. Whoever sits there and thinks that it is so impossible for for people to vote, and minorities are disadvantaged, and that there are Stasi at every voting place, trying to find ways to keep people from voting in a fair election. They're just living in a different world. They're living in a different reality. They're living in the Matrix. Like they're not connected into this planet at all. They're in some other fantasy land, and there's no bringing them back. I mean, I'm just gonna say it, but because like I'm dead serious. So, like I'll give you an example. My fiance and I during the last election, we had recently moved, and I switched my my voter address, and she did, but she did hers a little late because she forgot, and I thought she did, and I reminded her, and it was like a couple weeks before the election, so she did it, but unfortunately it didn't go through, so they didn't have a record of her at the polling at the voting station. So all she had to do, they let her vote. All she had to do was fill out this paper and provide like a proof of residence, like literally a piece of mail, and that was it. And she filled out this paper, and they let her vote right then and there. Wow, talk about suppression. She didn't even have the right address on her driver's license. She had the old address. So I don't want to hear it, okay? And this is in Virginia, this is in Virginia, like a, it's not a swing state, but it was definitely Republican for a number of years, but now it's been Democrat the last few, and hopefully we're going to change that. But anyway, this whole bill here, all it really does is, I believe this bill, they talk about it. Well, we'll start at the top. I'm getting all over the place. So, Texas Democrats leave state to try and stop GOP voting bill. Democrats in the Texas legislature bolted Monday for Washington and said they were ready to remain there for weeks in a second revolt. I didn't know this was a second one, against a GOP overhaul of election laws, forcing a dramatic new showdown over voting rights in America. And not only this, they got on private planes, no masks, mind you. And I don't care. I don't care about masks. It's just the Democrats always yammer on and on and on about masks, and these people got on a plane without masks. And they also had like a freaking case of like Miller Lite. It was just ridiculous. So now, basically, the cross-country exodus was the second time that Democrats... All right. Hours after they took off, Republican Governor Greg Abbott told an Austin television station he would simply keep calling special sessions through next year if necessary and raise the possibility of Democrats facing arrest upon returning home. Now, I don't think they talk about this in this article, but per the Texas law, they do reserve the right to detain any Democrats that have forced no quorum or whatever, and escort them back to the state house once they return to the state, and basically lock them in the room until they actually do their frickin' job, and they are not allowed to leave unless they are permitted to leave by the Speaker of the House in Texas. So that is certainly within their legal right to do so. So, yeah, as soon as they come back in the state of Texas, they will be arrested. They will be cabined inside the Texas Capitol until they get their job done. Decision to hold in Washington is aimed at ratcheting up pressure on President Joe Biden and Congress to act on voting at the federal level. So that's really all this is. It's not about actually stopping anything in Texas. It's literally about, it's the bigger, like I said earlier, it's the long game. They're playing the long game. They're trying to put pressure on Biden and Congress to do the quote-unquote For the People Act. It should be For the Democrats Act, For the Government Act, to make all elections federal, so states no longer control their own elections. It's a horrible idea. It's god-awful. It will basically destroy whatever free and fair election process we have left. And and then from there, we go the way that Rome went, and it won't be pretty. So that's basically what they're trying to do. they're trying to make this huge political stunt, and it worked. There was national coverage of this across the country. These idiots were paraded around on these news stations all weekend, and they were just they just couldn't stop smothering them with affection and praise, like how brave, stunning, and brave these people are. You know, we should all look up to them and strive to be like them. Like, I was one of them when I was in my early 20s. You know, the whole thing is that when you're young, if you weren't a Democrat, you don't have a heart, and then when you're older, if you're not a conservative, you don't have a brain. Well, that's pretty much where I'm at right now. That's how I see things. So, but let me see this. Yeah, okay. So here's the bills. This is all it does. The Texas bills would outlaw 24-hour polling places, banning ballot drop boxes, which is insane, used to deposit mail ballots, and empowering partisan poll watchers. The measures are part of the GOP's rush to enact new voting restrictions in response to foreign. This is stupid. What are you talking about? Okay, well, we're not going to get into that. So, basically, banning 24-hour polling places, basically like 24-hour voting, and then ballot drop boxes. Like, here, let me give you an example. In Washington, D.C., I saw this every day when I left work. There was a number of these big boxes that were just in the middle of these like small little like town squares, you know. And people would just come in and just drop ballots into these boxes. Like, who knows where they were coming from? Who knows who was dropping them in there? Like, there was literally no tracing whatsoever. They just literally looked like an oversized mailbox. Like, you just dropped stuff in there, and it was the most absurd thing I've ever seen. And then partisan poll watchers. Yes, of course, we need partisan poll watchers. We need people that are or not partisan, I'm sorry, nonpartisan poll watchers. I mean, basically, we need people that are not politically motivated to be poll watchers. They need people there that actually make sure people do things right. So, and also just having an ID. Really, what this bill does in Texas is eliminate a lot of the COVID standards that were enacted that now the Democrats are trying to make permanent. You know. And it's a mess. It's a huge mess. Anyway, moving on. Moving on here is this. This is actually quite scary. FBI urges monitoring of, quote, family members and peers for extremism. The Federal Bureau of Investigation warned Americans over the weekend to keep an eye on friends and family members for signs of mobilization to violence as part of the Biden administration's continued focus on domestic extremism. Yes, because that's what's threatening the world right now. That's what's threatening the country. Definitely not China. Don't look at China. See, this has happened throughout history, and I highly recommend anybody who hasn't already read The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I can never pronounce his name correctly. Read that book. I've only read half of it because I could only stomach so much, because some of the stuff you read in there is just so mind-boggling and insane. Like, you just can't believe it's true. Like, you're just like, how could a country do this to its own people? Like, you're just left aghast by reading some of this stuff. So, but when a country's own government becomes so paranoid that they start trying to find ways to arrest their own citizens for conspiracies instead of focusing on international threats, that's when you know the country is falling apart. That's like one of the signs, is that like when the government can no longer trust its own people, like on a degree like this, and you have a deep divide between two sides of the political spectrum, that's when you know things are falling apart. So family members and peers are often best positioned to witness signs of mobilization to violence. Help prevent homegrown violent extremism. Learn how to spot suspicious behaviors and report them to the FBI. Oh, let me guess. Going to the shooting range? Having a bunch of beers with your friends late at night in the basement? Someone stop that man. Someone stop that man. He's grilling in the backyard talking about how the Biden administration is taking away our freedoms. So, basically, though, this is how it started in Soviet Russia. The government, the KGB and the Soviet government started telling their citizens to alert police if any of their neighbors or family members started speaking ill of the communist government. And when you did, agents, the KGB would show up, most of the time in the middle of the night, break down your door, barge in there, just show a paper, flash just a little paper, and then arrest all of you. And you had no rights. You had no right to an attorney. You had no right, or you had nothing. You had nothing to defend yourself with outside of your word, which was meaningless. And it got to the point, and you read this in that book, the Gulag Archipelago, you read this, the people in Russia were so frightened, so scared, and paranoid themselves, because the government was so paranoid, that they would sometimes make up things about their neighbors. That they would just, like, lie, or if they thought they heard them say something or thought they were being a little suspicious, they would snitch. And most of the time they were doing that to try and make themselves look good to the government. Good job, comrade. You get an extra ration this week. That's why a lot of these people were doing it. And then sometimes people were doing it just to get even against their neighbors. If they had like a dispute or something, or if they had an argument, I'll show them. I'm going to report them to the KGB, get them arrested. So that's the slippery slope that we're in right now. It can quickly get to that point. Now, the only benefit that this country has against this type of stuff is, of course, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all that stuff. We still do have a pretty good group of constitutional lawyers that are willing to go to bat for people. But most people don't have the money to take on that kind of stuff. I mean, we still have people in prison in D.C. for walking around inside the Congress, Anyway, so that was like the main message I wanted to get on this whole thing here. This whole FBI thing. It's just a slippery slope. It's scary. It's horrifying, and it's frightening. To say the least. All right, so that's pretty much it. I had one other note on here about the CPAC in Texas and Trump spoke at. That was really cool. I watched it. I mean, it was a basic Trump speech. It was great. He went off the cuff a few times and just free rolled it, and which is always fun and entertaining. The straw poll that they took at CPAC, if it was between him and DeSantis, it was just an overwhelming majority for Trump against DeSantis. Now, the opposite of that, if it's just DeSantis and say like a handful of other people, the majority obviously is for DeSantis. But I think all signs seem to be pointing at him running again in 2024. The only thing I can see that could keep him from running would be this big tech lawsuit. I don't see why, if you're in the middle of this class action lawsuit as a private citizen, and if it somehow gets kicked down the road just because of how slow this whole process is, and appeals and going to other judges, and because these big tech companies aren't going down without a fight, So this could go all the way to the Supreme Court, and that could stretch all the way until he has to make an actual decision. And at that point, well, then political bias. At that point, bias comes in. and that can be used against Trump if he were to be running for president. And that's the one thing, in my opinion, that could really that could really hamper his decision making when it comes to trying to run in 2024. Because again, if he tries to, if he's in the middle of this, this whole legal fight, and he's got to make a decision. He's got to decide what's more important, finishing this lawsuit or becoming the president again. And arguably, he could just, go in as president. But a lot of people, I think, would be really disappointed if that lawsuit didn't get completed before, before then. So we'll see what happens. Kind of yammering at this point. So if you enjoyed the video, please, all that good stuff, like, share, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching this on right now. I am on, with this channel, I'm on YouTube and Rumble. And I'm trying to get some live streaming in the future for Rumble. But until then, I will see you all next week.